The entire lobby fell into a stunned hush the moment Loretta Pike wheeled in a bright blue post office dolly as though she owned the place outright. With unshakable confidence, she announced that every piece of HOA-related mail now belonged to her alone, then smacked a laminated badge onto the counter that read Community Mail Coordinator in a playful Comic Sans font. Postmaster Indira Patel didn't flinch. She simply reached beneath the glass partition, pressed a button, and a heavy steel shutter slammed down over the service window with the decisive finality of a judge's gavel. Through the intercom came a voice as sharp and cold as forged steel. "Ma'am, please step away from federal property." Loretta lunged toward the outgoing mail bin in protest. Indira calmly lifted the phone and said, "Postal inspectors, please. I'm Graham Teller, systems analyst, devoted fan of quiet living, proud owner of a modest ranch-style home in Fox Landing, and guardian of a fig tree that produces far less drama than my HOA ever manages to generate. I prefer my life the way I prefer my spreadsheets, orderly, predictable, and shared only with those who absolutely need access." Then Fox Glove Landing elected Loretta Pike as HOA president, a woman armed with towering bouffant hair, pearls substantial enough to finance a small nation, and a temperament built entirely from fines and infractions. After her victory, HOA envelopes began arriving daily, each containing complaints that grew more ridiculous by the week. Your trash can lid was observed at an improper angle at precisely 7:03 p.m. Your porch light color temperature registers as emotionally distant and inhospitable. She concluded that residents were mishandling community correspondence and unveiled her grand plan. All HOA mail would be funneled through her for quality assurance and tone correction. At first, we chuckled, assuming it was a joke. She did not join in the laughter. It began with laminated signs zip-tied to the cluster mailboxes proclaiming that HOA mail must be submitted to Loretta for curation and approval. Soon she established a daily 3:00 p.m. patrol of the mail kiosk, clipboard swinging like a conductor's baton, keeping rhythm to some private, chaotic orchestra only she could hear. She began slapping neon "Return to Sender Not Community" approved stickers on packages. She informed new residents that first-class mail was optional if the contents failed to align with proper community spirit. She even devised a color-coded tagging system: yellow for pending review, orange for community concern, and red for immediate return to sender pending spiritual recalibration. I once watched her spend a full 45 minutes scrutinizing a Williams-Sonoma catalog addressed to the Johnsons, muttering that their purchasing habits were dragging down neighborhood property values. Her surveillance arsenal grew steadily. First came the folding chair, placed exactly 18 inches from the mailbox cluster. Next appeared a small table equipped with a cash box, where she attempted to collect a $2 processing fee for unsolicited package retrieval help. She acquired a megaphone to broadcast mail arrival announcements and began live streaming her activities as the self-appointed community postal guardian, a channel that attracted exactly 7 followers, 6 of whom subscribed solely to gather evidence. She mounted a Ring doorbell camera on a pole beside the mailboxes, insisting it was for security while actually using it to track deliveries from wine clubs or upscale meal kit services she considered too extravagant for our solidly middle-class enclave. One afternoon, a neighbor spotted her on her knees before the aero-locked panel, palms pressed to the metal as if willing it to yield through sheer determination. She had produced a set of lockpicks described as emergency community access tools and was fumbling with them while grumbling about federal overreach and the oppression of postal rules. When challenged, she claimed she was conducting a protective security audit. The following day, several households mysteriously stopped receiving dues, statements, and pool key renewals. Meanwhile, a rumor clearly originating with Loretta herself spread that I was operating an unauthorized side business from my mailbox because I received 2 Amazon envelopes weekly and, in an outrageous twist, occasionally a book. She formed a neighborhood watch dedicated exclusively to suspicious mail activity, consisting of herself and her equally fervent friend Deborah, who diligently recorded everyone's delivery patterns. The apparent epidemic of literacy in our subdivision became intolerable to her, especially after she learned I subscribed to 3 different magazines, an indulgence she labeled excessive and tantamount to hoarding. The breaking point arrived when Loretta marched into the Cedar Key post office, carrying a thick folder of self-prepared forms. She had photocopied PS Form 8076 30 times, filling each with Foxglove Landing Community in place of individual resident names. Attached was an official-looking HOA letterhead document appointing herself authorized agent for all association households, signed by the Board of Excellence in 3 different colored inks. She demanded that staff intercept any envelope containing the HOA acronym or community-related content and reroute all parcels to her for compliance screening. Postmaster Patel examined the paperwork for 4 seconds flat, then inquired, in a voice cold enough to solidify lava, "Where are the individual resident authorizations?" Loretta tapped her laminated badge as if it were an all-powerful amulet and declared, "This grants me complete authority." Indira stared straight into the lobby security camera, pressed the shutter button once more, and placed a direct call to the USPS inspection service without breaking eye contact. That same afternoon, across town, I entered the post office to check my P.O. box and nearly stumbled over Loretta's triumphant dolly, now piled high with other residents' mail like a dragon's trove composed entirely of Bed Bath and Beyond coupons and pre-approved credit offers. 2 postal inspectors arrived the next morning, impeccably pressed and professional, escorted by a local police officer who appeared to be present mainly for moral support and occasional commentary. The postal inspectors gently but firmly separated Loretta from her dolly stacked with pilfered mail, much like a patient teacher prying a coveted glue stick from an overly enthusiastic kindergartner during art time. Inspector Reyes recited the relevant statutes from Title 18 of the United States Code, Sections 1701 through 1703, which prohibit obstruction, delay, theft, and tampering with U.S. mail. At the same time, Indira methodically printed out screenshots of Loretta's fabricated forms, marking each violated federal regulation with bold strokes of a yellow highlighter. The inspectors examined the lobby security footage that captured Loretta sorting through envelopes, posing for selfies with the tub-op resorted small parcels as if it were a popular landmark, and attempting to pry open the outgoing mail slot like a stubborn vending machine withholding her snack. When they asked who had granted her permission to gather everyone's mail, she replied without hesitation, "The community did." When pressed for specific names, she answered simply, "Mine," as though that settled the matter entirely. The accompanying police officer turned away and coughed into his sleeve to conceal what was unmistakably amusement. Fiedel's contents were catalogued item by item. The counterfeit documents were sealed into evidence bags, the kind familiar from television crime dramas. Loretta was politely escorted to a back room for a seated interview in chairs engineered to encourage profound self-reflection and sudden clarity about one's actions. That evening's emergency HOA meeting drew a capacity crowd, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Residents who hadn't bothered to attend in half a decade arrived with folding lawn chairs and thermoses brimming with coffee, primed for the spectacle. I arrived prepared with a large bowl of popcorn and, in my precisely documented brand of pettiness, a printed copy of the official USPS poster declaring in large bold type that tampering with mail is a federal offense punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment. I also carried printed screenshots of Loretta's own social media posts, complete with timestamps and geotags that amounted to the most meticulous self-incrimination imaginable. Inspector Reyes himself attended to read the official postal inspection statement to the overflowing room. It featured a 12-page cease and desist order, exhaustively listing every infraction, complete with subsections and footnotes. It included a referral to the United States Attorney's Office for possible criminal prosecution on charges of mail theft, obstruction of correspondence, and conspiracy to disrupt postal operations. The inspector emphasized in no uncertain terms that any future attempts at mail curation would trigger immediate federal charges carrying a minimum 6-month sentence. Then came the heartbreaking human toll that left the room gasping and more than a few people visibly emotional. One neighbor's critical diabetes medication had been delayed for a week, leading to severe suffering and an emergency room visit. Another resident's vital immigration documents were returned Tadinder for failing the community vibes test, nearly causing a missed deadline for green card renewal and possible deportation. A grandmother never received printed photos announcing the birth of her first great-grandchild because Loretta judged them irrelevant to the neighborhood. A small business owner lost a $20,000 contract when key paperwork was withheld. A veteran's VA benefits forms were stalled, resulting in 2 months without disability payments. The Foxglove Landing insurance representative spoke next in a voice sharp as broken glass, explaining that their policy expressly excluded coverage for intentional criminal acts by board members, and that the association itself could face liability for all damages stemming from Loretta's conduct. The remaining board members moved to remove Loretta from office with a unanimous 7-0 vote that took under 30 seconds, before the microphone had even cooled from the preceding discussion. The city attorney followed with an announcement of civil penalties totaling $15,000 for interfering with federal mail service to the cluster mailbox serving 47 households, plus an additional $5,000 per provable instance of mail theft, an amount that, given the evidence, would likely reach another $35,000. The postmaster had secured a permanent restraining order, barring Loretta from coming within 20 feet of any mail kiosk, a boundary meticulously measured with the tape measure and outlined in vivid orange chalk like the perimeter of an active crime scene. Loretta's complexion cycled through every shade of crimson before settling on an alarming purple. When the judge sentenced her to 160 hours of community service, specifically at the post office, sorting undeliverable mail under Postmaster Patel's direct oversight while studying proper postal procedures, she emitted a small, involuntary squeak reminiscent of a rusted hinge. Federal prosecutors opted not to seek incarceration, but issued a stern warning: any breach of the restraining order would lead to immediate arrest and a potential 5-year federal prison term. The $15,000 fine was due within 30 days. When Loretta protested that she could never afford such a sum, the city attorney offered a gracious smile and proposed a convenient payment plan featuring a reasonable 18% interest rate. Her cherished real estate license, the one she had flaunted at every possible opportunity, was suspended pending investigation by the state licensing board upon receipt of the federal complaint. She stood motionless, mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a stranded fish, as the full weight of consequences collapsed around her like a flimsy house of cards caught in a gale.